Hey guys, tonight we're going to dim the lights, perhaps light a candle if you're feeling extra cozy, and journey back to a land of golden sands and even more golden treasures. But tonight, we're not just admiring the glittering wealth of pharaohs. We're uncovering something the ancient Egyptians held even dearer, something that purred its way into their hearts and history. You'll explore a bond so profound, so utterly fascinating, it might just make you question your own priorities, especially if your current priority is just surviving another Monday morning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from tonight and what time it is in your part of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, if you will, the scorching sun beating down on the ancient land of Egypt. You stand amidst bustling markets, the air thick with the scent of spices, dust, and the distant murmur of the Nile. Around you, the wealth of an empire is palpable. You see merchants haggling over precious stones, artisans meticulously crafting intricate jewelry, and everywhere, the unmistakable gleam of gold. Gold, shimmering like liquid sunshine, adorned the pharaohs, filled their tombs, and was meticulously shaped into idols and symbols of power. It was the very embodiment of prosperity, a tangible connection to the sun god Ra himself. For us, in our modern world, gold still holds that undeniable allure, that universal understanding of immense value. You'd probably sell your least favorite kidney for a decent-sized nugget, right? Perhaps a kidney and that dusty exercise bike in the corner. But here's where the story takes a delightfully unexpected turn. A pivot so profound it might just make your eyebrows do a little dance of surprise. Because while the Egyptians certainly loved their gold, and let's be honest, who doesn't appreciate a good bling-bling moment? There was something else, something with 4 paws and a swishing tail, that they valued even more. Yes, we are talking about cats. Not just as pets, mind you, but as something woven into the very fabric of their spiritual, domestic, and even economic existence so deeply that it made gold look like, well, just a shiny rock. You see, when you picture ancient Egypt, you likely conjure images of towering pyramids, majestic pharaohs, and perhaps the glint of Tutankhamun's famous golden burial mask. This mask, a breathtaking testament to ancient Egyptian artistry and wealth, is crafted from over 22 pounds of solid gold, inlaid with lapis lazuli and other precious stones. It's a mainstream historical fact that highlights the sheer abundance and significance of gold in their culture. But now, try to hold that image of gleaming gold in your mind, and then superimpose a tiny, purring creature, and understand that the latter held a deeper, more intrinsic worth. It's like valuing your morning coffee more than your entire retirement fund, simply because it gets you through the day. Well, maybe not that extreme, but you get the drift. The depth of this devotion to cats is truly astonishing. It wasn't a passing fancy, a trend that came and went like flared jeans. This was a bond that spanned millennia, a relationship so integral to their worldview that it permeates nearly every aspect of their surviving culture. You see cats depicted in tomb paintings, their sleek forms lounging elegantly beside their human companions, or crouched, poised to pounce, in domestic scenes. They weren't just drawn. They were immortalized, given a place of honor alongside the deceased, ready for the journey to the afterlife. It's a bit like if your cat had its own dedicated wing in your house, complete with miniature furniture and a personal chef, maybe even its own tiny chariot, pulled by particularly patient hamsters. You might find yourself wondering, as many do, how a creature that spends 70% of its life asleep and the other 30% judging your life choices could achieve such an elevated status. It's not a simple question, and historians still argue whether the initial reverence for cats stemmed purely from their practical utility, or if there was an innate spiritual connection from the very beginning. Did they first appreciate them for their pest control, and then gradually elevate them, or was there always a sense of the divine in their mysterious eyes? It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, except with more purring and less clucking. What is undeniable, however, is the sheer intensity of this feline fascination. Imagine a society where harming a cat, even accidentally, could lead to severe punishment, potentially even death. This wasn't just a law on paper. It was a deeply ingrained cultural norm. Think about that for a moment. A society where a misplaced step on a sleeping feline could land you in more trouble than pilfering a few gold trinkets. It really puts your own relationship with your cat into perspective, doesn't it? Suddenly, that time you tripped over mittens in the dark doesn't seem so innocent. This wasn't just about owning a pet. It was about integrating a living, breathing entity into your spiritual landscape. The Egyptians believed that cats possessed a unique connection to the divine, that they embodied certain aspects of their gods and goddesses. It's almost as if you believed your cat, when it kneads on your chest, isn't just making biscuits, but is actually performing some ancient, sacred ritual to bless your soul. And let's be honest, sometimes it feels that way, doesn't it? Especially when they decide to knead directly on your bladder at 3 a.m. The sheer scale of this devotion is mind-boggling. You're not just talking about a few households having a cherished cat. You're envisioning an entire civilization, from the pharaohs in their opulent palaces to the farmers working the fertile banks of the Nile, all sharing this profound, almost reverential, respect for felines. It wasn't a niche hobby. It was a universal truth. It wasn't just some people who loved cats. It was everyone. This was a society where the cat was not merely tolerated but celebrated, revered, and protected with a fervor that would make even the most dedicated modern cat person blush. Consider the contrast with gold. Gold, while beautiful and symbolic of wealth, is ultimately inert. It can buy things, it can adorn, but it doesn't do anything on its own. It doesn't purr, it doesn't hunt, it doesn't offer companionship. Cats, on the other hand, were dynamic, living beings that actively contributed to the household and the spiritual well-being of the Egyptians. They were protectors, companions, and spiritual conduits. The value they held wasn't just about what they were made of, but what they did and what they represented. It was a value system that prioritized living, breathing, purring essence over cold, hard metal. And this reverence wasn't just for the sleek, domestic cat we recognize today. There's a quirky tidbit that suggests the Egyptians may have even had a particular fondness for a specific type of cat known as the African wildcat, Felis libica, which is believed to be the ancestor of our modern domesticated house cat. While the exact timeline and methods of domestication are still subjects of ongoing archaeological and genetic research, the sheer number of cat remains and depictions suggests a very early and very successful integration of these wild felines into human society. They didn't just stumble into Egyptian homes. They were welcomed, cherished, and eventually deified. It's a bit like inviting a tiger into your living room and then giving it a crown. Except, much smaller and less likely to eat your couch. So, as you drift further into this story, allow yourself to truly grasp the magnitude of this unique relationship. Forget for a moment the pyramids and the pharaohs. Focus instead on the quiet purr of a cat in an ancient Egyptian home, a sound that resonated with a spiritual significance far deeper than any earthly treasure. This wasn't just affection. It was a profound, almost mystical connection that elevated these furry creatures beyond mere animals, bestowing upon them a status that gold, for all its glitter, could never hope to achieve. This was a love story between a civilization and its felines, a bond of mutual respect and deep, abiding fascination that truly set ancient Egypt apart. Imagine, if you will, that you've time-traveled back to ancient Egypt. Not to the glittering palaces or the towering pyramids just yet, but to a humble, sun-baked home, perhaps near the fertile banks of the Nile. You can almost feel the dry dust beneath your bare feet, the warmth of the sun on your skin, and the faint, earthy scent of stored grain mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread. Life here, you quickly realize, is a delicate dance with nature. The annual floods bring life, yes, but also a teeming ecosystem of creatures that, while fascinating from a distance, are absolute nightmares when they decide your home or your granary is their 5-star buffet. You see, for the ancient Egyptians, survival wasn't just about planting seeds and waiting for the Nile to do its magic. It was a constant, vigilant battle against the tiny, scuttling, slithering forces of chaos that could wipe out a year's hard work in a blink. Think about it. You've toiled under the blazing sun, harvested your precious wheat and barley, the very sustenance for your family and your community, and now you need to store it. Where do you put it? in baskets, in jars, in cool, dark granaries. And what do those dark, cozy spaces attract? Rodents. Lots and lots of rodents. Mice, rats, all with tiny, sharp teeth and an insatiable appetite for your future. These weren't just annoying pests. They were harbingers of hunger, of famine, of economic ruin. A major infestation could decimate a family's entire food supply, leading to illness, starvation, and despair. Now, you might think, well, why didn't they just build better traps? Or use poisons? And you'd be right to ask. But in a world without modern pest control, without highly effective chemical deterrents, the solutions were limited, and frankly, a bit gross. Enter the unsung heroes of ancient Egyptian households. The whispering paws. Yes, you guessed it. Cats. These weren't just fluffy companions to stroke while you pondered the mysteries of the universe. Oh no, these were lean, mean, purring machines. The original work-from-home employees, if you will, except their office was your entire dwelling and their job description was eradicate anything smaller than a duck that moves. You'd see them, a flash of tawny fur, a flick of a tail, and then a sudden pounce. A tiny squeak, and just like that, another potential ruin of your dinner was swiftly dealt with. It was an efficiency that would make any modern pest control company weep with envy. And they did it for free. Well, mostly for scraps of fish and a warm spot by the fire. Pretty good deal when you think about it. Consider the sheer scale of the problem. Ancient Egypt's economy, as you might already know, was overwhelmingly agricultural. The annual flooding of the Nile deposited rich, fertile silt, allowing for abundant harvests of grain. This grain wasn't just food. It was currency, it was power, it was the very foundation of their civilization. Large granaries, often managed by the state, held vast quantities of this precious resource. Protecting these stores was paramount. A single rat could contaminate a significant portion of grain with its waste, and a breeding pair could quickly lead to an explosion of their population, turning a valuable asset into a biohazard zone. That's where the cats truly shone. They were the frontline defense, silent sentinels patrolling the perimeters, their keen senses picking up the faintest rustle in the straw, the slightest scurry in the shadows. But it wasn't just rodents they were good at dispatching. Imagine yourself walking through your home, perhaps reaching for a sandal, and suddenly, there it is. A scorpion, its tail poised to strike. Or worse, a venomous snake, slithering silently across the floor. In a land teeming with such creatures, where a single bite could mean agonizing pain, paralysis, or even death, having a guardian with lightning-fast reflexes and an innate instinct for danger was literally a lifesaver. Cats, with their natural predatory instincts, were adept at spotting and neutralizing these threats. They didn't need training. They just needed to be cats. Their presence alone was a deterrent, an invisible shield against the unseen dangers that lurked in every corner, every crack in the mud brick wall. You might even chuckle imagining a cat, lounging regally, perhaps pretending to be asleep, but with one ear twitching, one eye barely open, perfectly aware of every tiny movement. They were masters of camouflage and stealth, blending into the background until their moment to strike arrived. It's almost as if they were saying, "Oh, this? Just another day at the office. Don't mind me. I'm just saving your life from a very rude, six-legged intruder." And they did it with such nonchalant grace, didn't they? No dramatic fanfare, just quiet, efficient service. The relationship wasn't just about utility, though. It was about integration. These weren't animals kept in cages or relegated to the fields. They lived with the families. You'd see them curled up by the hearth, napping in a patch of sunlight, or even perched on a shoulder, observing the bustling household. Their presence brought a certain calm, a sense of security. You could sleep a little sounder knowing that a vigilant pair of emerald eyes was on patrol, listening for the telltale scratch of tiny claws or the whisper of a snake's scales. Historians still debate the precise timeline and mechanisms of cat domestication, but most agree it was a gradual process, likely beginning when wildcats, attracted by the abundant rodents in human settlements and granaries, started to tolerate human presence. It wasn't so much that humans tamed them, as much as the cats saw a good deal, free food, warm shelter, and an endless supply of live toys, and decided to stick around. This quirky theory of self-domestication speaks volumes about the cat's independent spirit. Even back then, they weren't slaves. They were partners. A fascinating thought, isn't it? So, when you consider the daily grind of ancient Egyptian life, the constant struggle for survival against natural forces, and the ever-present threat of pests, the cat wasn't just a pet. It was an essential member of the household economy, a living, breathing pest control system, and a vital guardian of health and prosperity. They were the silent protectors of the very agricultural wealth that fueled the empire, making sure that the food grown could actually be eaten, rather than becoming a feast for unwelcome guests. Without these agile hunters, life would have been immeasurably harder, more precarious, and far less comfortable. They truly were indispensable partners in daily life, their whispering paws a constant, reassuring presence against the unseen threats that loomed in the shadows. So, you've heard about how these four-legged, purring ninjas were the ultimate pest control, right? They kept your pantry safe, your granaries full, and your family from having a rodent roommate situation. But imagine, for a moment, looking at that sleek, self-assured creature stretched out in a sunbeam, twitching an ear at a distant fly, and thinking, yep, that's a god. Because that, my friend, is precisely where the ancient Egyptians went with it. They took the practical, the everyday, and elevated it to the truly divine. You see, for the Egyptians, the world wasn't just a collection of things. It was a tapestry woven with the threads of the divine. Every aspect of nature, every animal, every river and sunbeam, held a deeper meaning, a connection to the cosmic order. And in the elegant, enigmatic form of the cat, they saw something truly special, something that transcended mere earthly utility. These weren't just good mousers. They were sacred guardians, living embodiments of divine power and protection. Think about it. You're an ancient Egyptian, living your life along the fertile banks of the Nile. The world is full of dangers, venomous snakes slithering in the shadows, scorpions hiding under stones, and rats. Oh, the rats, bringing disease and devouring your precious harvest. Then a cat appears, silent as a whisper, agile as a thought. It stalks these very threats. You watch, mesmerized, as it dispatches a venomous cobra with a lightning-fast pounce, or clears a granary of its scurrying invaders. To you, this isn't just a clever animal. This is a miracle worker. It's a living, breathing shield against the chaos, a tiny, furry champion of order. The Egyptians had a concept called ma'at, which was the cosmic principle of truth, balance, order, and justice. Opposing ma'at was isfit, the force of chaos, disorder, and evil. When you saw a cat effortlessly subdue a snake, a creature often associated with chaos and the underworld, it wasn't just pest control. It was a manifestation of ma'at triumphing over isfit. The cat became a symbol, then an agent, and eventually an embodiment of that divine order. It was like watching a tiny superhero movie unfold in your mudbrick home every single day. And unlike most superheroes, this one actually cleaned up after itself. Mostly, consider their eyes, those luminous orbs that seemed to glow in the dim light. In a world without electricity, where shadows held unknown terrors, the cat's superior night vision was nothing short of miraculous. They could see what you couldn't, navigate the darkness with ease, and detect threats lurking just beyond your human perception. This ability wasn't just practical. It was interpreted as a divine gift, a connection to the unseen realms. They were seen as protectors against the evils that prowled in the night, their watchful gaze a constant vigil against malevolent spirits or creatures. It's like having a tiny, purring security camera with built-in night vision, but one that also looks incredibly regal and judges your life choices silently. Their very nature, a blend of fierce independence and sudden, intense affection, mirrored the complex nature of the gods themselves. One moment, they're aloof, stretching languidly, ignoring your pleas for attention. The next, they're purring against your leg, rubbing their head against your hand, showering you with a sudden, overwhelming wave of devotion. This duality, the untamed wildness and the profound domesticity, resonated deeply with the Egyptian pantheon. where gods could be both benevolent protectors and fearsome avengers. Now, it's important to understand that when we say gods in fur, it's not like every single house cat was worshipped as a literal deity in its own right. Rather, cats were seen as avatars or manifestations of specific deities, or as possessing a divine essence. They were living conduits, imbued with the spirit and power of the gods. It's a subtle but crucial distinction, like the difference between a king and the crown he wears. The crown is a symbol of his power, but it's not the king himself. Though, let's be honest, some cats definitely act like they're the king and the crown. One of the most mainstream historical facts connected to this is the role of cats in relation to the sun god Ra. The supreme deity was believed to journey across the sky each day in his solar bark, bringing light and life to the world. But each night, as he passed through the underworld, he faced his greatest enemy, the colossal serpent of chaos, a pep, sometimes spelled Apophis. This monstrous snake sought to devour Ra and plunge the world into eternal darkness. Who was Ra's protector in this nightly cosmic battle? Often, it was depicted as a cat, specifically a large, divine cat, who would slice a pep into pieces with a knife. This powerful imagery solidified the cat's role as a defender against chaos, a champion of light over darkness, and a crucial player in the very survival of the cosmos. If you ever wondered why your cat stares intensely at an empty corner, maybe they're just reliving their ancestral glory, battling an invisible Apep. Or maybe they just saw a dust bunny. Who's to say? The Egyptians believed that the qualities of the gods could be found within certain animals. The swiftness of the falcon embodied Horus, the strength of the crocodile embodied Sobuk, and the nurturing, protective, and sometimes fierce nature of the cat embodied goddesses like Bastet. While we'll delve deeper into Bastet in the next section, it's crucial to grasp that the concept of a feline deity, a goddess with the head of a cat, arose directly from this profound reverence for the animal's inherent qualities. They saw in the cat a reflection of divine feminine power, grace, fertility, protection, and a fierce, unyielding defense of home and family. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some scholars suggest that the cat's purr, that deep, resonant rumble of contentment, was also seen as a sacred sound. It was believed to have healing properties, a soothing vibration that could ward off illness and evil spirits. Imagine listening to your cat purring on your chest, and instead of just thinking, "Ah, my furball is happy," you're thinking, "Ah, the divine vibrations are cleansing my soul and protecting me from ancient curses." Suddenly, that nap with your cat takes on a whole new level of spiritual significance, doesn't it? It's like a free, personalized sound bath, courtesy of a creature that still demands to be fed 5 minutes after you just fed it. The process of this elevation wasn't overnight. Historians still argue whether the deification of cats was a gradual cultural evolution, slowly building from their practical usefulness to symbolic representation, or if there were specific moments or religious decrees that solidified their sacred status. Regardless, by the late period of ancient Egypt, the cat's position as a revered animal, linked intrinsically to the divine, was firmly established. Their presence in temples, their depiction in religious iconography, and the sheer number of cat mummies discovered all point to an unparalleled level of veneration. So, when you consider the ancient Egyptians' perspective, it wasn't just about admiring a cute pet. It was about recognizing a living embodiment of powerful divine forces. It was about seeing Ma'at in miniature, a protector against the forces of chaos, a conduit for healing, and a reflection of the very gods themselves. Every swish of a tail, every attentive gaze, every silent pounce was a reminder of the sacred order that governed their world, and the magnificent creatures chosen to guard it. This deep, cosmic connection is why these gods in fur held such an incredibly high, almost unimaginable value in ancient Egyptian society. They weren't just animals. They were living prayers, walking blessings, and purring protectors of the very fabric of existence. Now, as your eyelids grow just a little heavier, and the world outside fades to a gentle hum, you find yourself drifting into the very heart of ancient Egyptian devotion. You've glimpsed how cats, those sleek, enigmatic creatures, ascended to a place of reverence. But to truly understand the boundless depth of their value, far beyond any glint of gold, you must meet her. You must meet Bastet. Imagine, if you will, the sun-drenched banks of the Nile, the air thick with the scent of papyrus and the distant chirping of crickets. It's a place where the divine wasn't abstract or distant, but intimately woven into the fabric of daily life. And nowhere was this more evident than in the figure of Bastet, the goddess whose very presence purred through the homes and hearts of every Egyptian family. You see, while other deities might have commanded the vastness of the cosmos or the fury of the battlefield, Bastet was the goddess of the hearth, the home, the quiet moments of joy and comfort. She was, in essence, the embodiment of everything a domestic cat brought to a household, elevated to a divine plane. Initially, in the earliest dynasties, Bastet was often depicted with the head of a lioness, sharing a fierce, protective aspect with her more formidable counterpart, Sekhmet, the goddess of war and pestilence. Think of it like this. Sekhmet was the lioness on the hunt, all raw power and untamed might, while Bastet was the lioness curled by the fire, vigilant but serene. It's a fascinating evolution, one that historians still debate the precise timeline and cultural shifts behind. Did she soften as the Egyptians domesticated cats more fully, or did her gentler form emerge as a counterpoint to Sekhmet's intensity? Perhaps it was a bit of both, a beautiful reflection of how their understanding of the feline spirit deepened. But as the centuries unfolded, Bastet shed her wilder, more fearsome guise, transforming into the beloved goddess we recognize today. A woman with the head of a domestic cat, or sometimes, simply a graceful, elegant cat herself. This transformation was no mere artistic whim. It mirrored the growing intimacy and interdependence between Egyptians and their feline companions. You can almost feel the shift in energy, from the awe of the untamed predator to the warmth of a purring friend stretched out in a sunbeam. She became the goddess of joy, music, dance, and celebration. If you ever wondered why Egyptians seemed to have so much fun, well, Bastet was probably behind it. She was the divine patron of good times, the kind of deity who probably enjoyed a good nap and a vigorous scratch behind the ears as much as you do. Her influence, however, was far from trivial. Bastet was the protector of women, children, and the home. In a world where childbirth was fraught with danger and infant mortality tragically high, Bastet offered a glimmer of hope and divine intervention. You'd find amulets depicting her, often with her kittens, worn by expectant mothers, a silent prayer for safe delivery and healthy offspring. Imagine a young Egyptian woman, heavy with child, gently stroking a small cat, feeling the soft vibrations of its purr, and knowing that Bastet, the benevolent mother, watched over her. It must have brought immense comfort, a sense of peace in an uncertain world. She was also intimately associated with fertility and sexual health, aspects that were openly celebrated in ancient Egypt, unlike some later cultures. Bastet's temples were not somber places of hushed reverence, but vibrant centers of life, filled with music, dance, and lively festivals. The most famous of these was her cult center at Bastet, a city in the Nile Delta, which became a pilgrimage site for thousands. During her annual festival, called the Festival of Drunkenness, people would travel by boat, singing, dancing, and making offerings. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, observed these celebrations with a mix of fascination and perhaps a little bemusement, noting the joyous, uninhibited revelry. It sounds like a party you'd actually want to attend, doesn't it? A far cry from your typical quiet temple visit. You can almost hear the sistrums, those rattle-like musical instruments, clinking rhythmically, feel the warm breeze carrying the scent of incense, and see the flickering torchlight illuminating the dancing shadows of cats, both real and depicted. The offerings to Bastet were varied, but one of the most poignant and common was the mummified cat. While we'll delve deeper into mummification later, it's important to understand here that these weren't just random pets. They were often purpose-bred, or perhaps found and ritually prepared, serving as sacred offerings, intercessors to the goddess. Think of it as leaving a special gift for your favorite celebrity. Only the celebrity is a goddess and the gift is a perfectly preserved feline. Thousands upon thousands of these mummified cats have been discovered in vast catacombs near her temples. a truly astonishing testament to the scale of devotion. It's a quirky tidbit, perhaps, but it speaks volumes about the depth of their belief in Bastet's power and their desire to please her with what they held most sacred, their beloved felines. Bastet's role extended to protecting against disease and evil spirits. In a time without modern medicine, where plagues could decimate communities, any divine protection was eagerly sought. Cats, with their keen senses and nocturnal habits, were seen as natural guardians against unseen malevolent forces. By extension, Bastet, the ultimate cat, became the ultimate protector. You'd find her image on household shrines, on protective amulets worn by everyone from pharaohs to commoners. She was the watchful eye, the silent guardian, ensuring the safety and well-being of the family unit. So, when you consider her influence, you understand why Bastet was so profoundly valued. She wasn't just a goddess of abstract concepts. She was the divine embodiment of home, family, protection, joy, and fertility. She was the purr that soothed a crying baby, the swift paw that banished a scorpion, the watchful gaze that kept evil at bay. She was the reason for laughter, the hope for new life, the comfort in the face of fear. Her presence, evoked by the everyday cats in their homes, was a constant reminder of divine benevolence. Compared to the cold, inert beauty of gold, Bastet offered something immeasurably more vital: life, health, happiness, and peace within the domestic sphere. Gold could buy you status, adorn your tomb, or fund your armies, but it couldn't protect your children from illness, ensure a bountiful harvest, or fill your home with laughter. Bastet, through her feline proxies, did all that and more. She was the living, breathing, purring heart of the Egyptian home, a goddess whose influence touched every aspect of family life, ensuring its continuity and prosperity. And in a society built on the family unit, that made her, and by extension, her sacred cats, truly invaluable. So, you've heard about the everyday purrs and the divine glow of ancient Egyptian cats. But now, let's talk about their journey to forever. You might think your beloved Fluffy gets pampered, but honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. When it came to the afterlife, ancient Egyptians didn't just like their cats. They practically gave them a VIP pass to eternity, complete with a full-service, 5-star mummification package. Imagine, if you will, the soft, golden light filtering into a sacred chamber, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and frankincense, a hushed reverence settling over everything. You're not just observing. You're practically smelling the ancient spices, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about preserving a body. It was about ensuring the Ka and Ba, the vital essence and personality of these revered creatures, could continue their existence in the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. It was, in essence, their version of a cosmic pet insurance policy, paid for with devotion and intricate ritual. You see, for the Egyptians, death wasn't an end. It was merely a transition, a rather significant change of address. And just as they prepared elaborate tombs and mummified their human deceased, they extended this profound courtesy to their feline companions. It wasn't just for the cats of pharaohs or high priests. Countless ordinary families, deeply attached to their whiskered guardians, would go to extraordinary lengths to ensure their beloved cat was given a proper send-off. It's like they had a celestial pet carrier service, only instead of a plastic crate, it was a perfectly preserved cat, ready for its next adventure. The process itself was, as you might expect, incredibly meticulous, echoing the human mummification rituals, albeit often on a smaller, perhaps slightly less grand scale, depending on the status of the cat and its owner. You wouldn't just wrap Mittens in a blanket and call it a day. Oh no. First, the cat's internal organs, except for the heart, which was believed to be the seat of intelligence and emotion, would be carefully removed. This step was crucial, as moisture was the enemy of preservation. Think of it as ancient Egyptian organ removal surgery, performed with a spiritual purpose and probably a lot less sterile than you'd hope for a modern hospital. Next, the body would be carefully dried using natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture abundant in Egypt. You can almost feel the gritty texture of the natron as it drew out all the moisture, transforming the soft tissue into something more durable, more eternal. This drying process could take up to 70 days, a long vigil that speaks volumes about the patience and dedication of the ancient embalmers. Imagine waiting over 2 months for your pet's final arrangements to be complete. You'd probably get bored and start watching a lot of ancient Egyptian reality TV, if such a thing existed. Once thoroughly desiccated, the cat's body would be meticulously cleaned and then often stuffed with linen, sawdust, or even aromatic resins to restore its natural shape. This wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about maintaining the integrity of the form for the afterlife. You wouldn't want your beloved feline looking all deflated when it met Osiris, would you? Then came the wrapping. And oh, the wrapping! You'd be amazed by the artistry involved. The cat would be swathed in layers upon layers of linen bandages, each strip carefully applied, sometimes in intricate geometric patterns. Think of it as the ultimate ancient Egyptian gift-wrapping service. Only the gift was a perfectly preserved cat, and the recipient was the afterlife itself. Often, small amulets and charms, believed to offer protection and good fortune in the afterlife, would be tucked between the layers, almost like tiny good luck charms for their eternal journey. You might even find a tiny scarab beetle, symbolizing rebirth, nestled within the folds. Here's a mainstream historical fact for you. Archaeologists have uncovered literally hundreds of thousands of mummified cats, particularly at sites like the catacombs of Bastet and Saqqara. This wasn't a rare practice. It was a widespread phenomenon, a testament to the sheer scale of feline reverence in ancient Egypt. Imagine excavating a site and finding an entire underground city populated by perfectly wrapped cats, some still bearing faint traces of painted eyes or whiskers on their linen shrouds. It's enough to make you wonder if they just had a massive cat population boom, or if every household had a designated mummification budget. Now, not all mummified cats were preserved with the same level of care. You'll find some that are truly exquisite, perfectly preserved specimens clearly belonging to wealthy families or temple patrons. But then you'll also encounter others that are little more than carefully wrapped bundles of bones, sometimes containing multiple cats, or even just fragments. Historians still debate whether these less-than-perfect mummies were perhaps mass-produced offerings for pilgrims visiting temples dedicated to cat goddesses like Bastet, or if they represented a more affordable option for those who still wished to honor their deceased felines but lacked the resources for a full, elaborate mummification. It's a bit like comparing a designer casket to a budget cremation package, but with more linen and ancient salts. The purpose of all this elaborate ritual was deeply rooted in their belief system. You see, the Egyptians believed that the afterlife was a continuation of this life, only better. And what could be better than having your loyal, protective, and often divinely connected cat by your side? They weren't just pets. They were companions, protectors, and even conduits to the divine. Mummifying them ensured their continued presence, a tangible link that could bridge the gap between the living and the dead. It was a profound act of love, hope, and spiritual conviction. Sometimes, you'll even find mummified cats placed in tombs alongside their human owners, a final, poignant gesture of companionship. Imagine waking up in the afterlife, a little disoriented, and then spotting your familiar feline friend, perfectly preserved and ready to curl up beside you for eternity. It's enough to bring a tear to your eye, isn't it? It speaks to a bond so deep it transcended even the ultimate boundary of death. And for a quirky, fringe tidbit, some mummified cats have been found with tiny, almost microscopic, offerings tucked into their wraps, sometimes even miniature bowls that were once filled with milk or small pieces of food, intended to sustain them on their journey. It's like packing a tiny lunchbox for their eternal road trip, just in case they got peckish on the way to the field of reeds. You can almost hear an ancient Egyptian parent saying, "Don't forget your snacks, whiskers." It's a long journey. The sheer scale of this practice is staggering. You're not just talking about a few dozen mummies. You're talking about millions, a veritable army of eternal felines. This wasn't just a quirky custom. It was a fundamental aspect of their spiritual landscape, a profound expression of their values. The time, effort, and resources poured into preparing these animals for the afterlife demonstrate a level of respect that truly elevates them beyond mere creatures. It tells you, without a shadow of a doubt, that these cats held a position of unparalleled importance in the Egyptian worldview. They weren't just valued. They were revered, cherished, and believed to be essential companions, even into the great unknown. So, you've spent some time pondering the elaborate rituals of mummification, imagining the meticulous care taken to preserve those precious feline forms, preparing them for eternity. But why? What was the ultimate destination for these carefully wrapped bundles of fur and bone? Why would the ancient Egyptians go to such astonishing lengths, dedicating resources and reverence to this final act? Well, my friend, you're about to discover that for the Egyptians, the journey didn't end with a final breath. Oh no. For them, death was just the beginning of the ultimate road trip, and they wanted their most trusted companions along for the ride. You see, you're about to understand the profound belief that cats were not just earthly dwellers, but eternal companions in the netherworld, destined to accompany, guard, and guide human souls even into the afterlife itself. Imagine, if you will, the deepest, darkest night you've ever experienced. Now, multiply that by infinity, add a few cosmic horrors, and sprinkle in some existential dread. That, my dear listener, is a rough approximation of what the ancient Egyptians believed awaited you upon shuffling off your mortal coil. The journey through the Duat, their intricate underworld, was no leisurely stroll through a sun-drenched meadow. It was a perilous, multi-stage odyssey, fraught with unimaginable dangers, shadowy demons, treacherous rivers of fire, and the constant threat of your soul being devoured or eternally lost. You trudge along, your spirit feeling vulnerable and adrift, facing trials you couldn't possibly comprehend in your earthly form. It's a bit like trying to navigate a new city without Google Maps, but instead of missing your turn, you might accidentally end up as dinner for a crocodile-headed beast. And let's be honest, trying to navigate the Duat without a cat? That's like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions. You're just asking for trouble. This is where your beloved feline companion steps in, or rather, slinks in. For the ancient Egyptians, the cat was not merely a pet to be enjoyed in this life. It was a necessary spiritual ally, a furry bodyguard, and an intuitive guide for the soul's perilous passage. You might envision your own cat, perhaps curled up beside you now, purring contentedly. Now, picture that same creature, but imbued with ancient wisdom and an innate ability to perceive the unseen, to ward off malevolent spirits, and to lead you through the labyrinthine pathways of the underworld. They were believed to possess a unique spiritual radar, a sixth sense for detecting danger and navigating the unknown, far beyond anything a mere human could hope for. While you're panicking about the crocodile-headed demon, your cat's probably just grooming itself, occasionally twitching an ear as if to say, "Oh, that guy. He's harmless once you get to know him. Just avoid eye contact." The belief in cats as afterlife companions is deeply interwoven with Egyptian funerary practices. When you explore the tombs of nobles and pharaohs, you often find not only the mummified remains of the deceased and their earthly possessions but also, quite frequently, the mummified forms of their cherished animals, particularly cats. These weren't just sentimental additions. They were strategic placements. The Egyptians believed that by including these mummified felines, they were ensuring the continued presence of their protective spirit, their guiding essence, in the afterlife. You see them depicted in vibrant tomb paintings, often seated serenely at the feet of the deceased, or sometimes in more dynamic poses, seemingly poised to pounce on unseen threats. These artistic representations weren't just decorative. They were spells, affirmations, visual prayers designed to manifest this protective presence in the spiritual realm. One mainstream historical fact that underscores this belief is the sheer volume of cat mummies found alongside human burials, particularly in later periods. While some were votive offerings to deities like Bastet, many were clearly interred with individuals, intended as personal companions. You'll find them nestled in sarcophagi, sometimes even within the same coffin as their human owner, a testament to an unbreakable bond that transcended even death. This wasn't a rare occurrence. It was a widespread, deeply ingrained practice, reflecting a societal consensus on the cat's crucial role in the afterlife. Now, for a quirkier tidbit that illuminates the specific dangers cats were thought to protect against. The Apophis serpent. This colossal, evil serpent was the embodiment of chaos, a cosmic adversary who constantly sought to devour the sun god Ra and plunged the world into eternal darkness. While Ra had his own divine protectors, the individual Egyptian soul also faced lesser, but still terrifying manifestations of chaos in the duat. Some scholars suggest that the cat, with its innate predatory skills and its association with the sun, as a creature that enjoyed basking in its warmth, was seen as a microcosmic defender against these serpentine threats. Imagine your little tabby, not just chasing a laser pointer, but bravely facing down a spiritual snake that could obliterate your very essence. That's a serious upgrade from pest control, wouldn't you agree? Historians still debate the precise meaning of certain spells in the Book of the Dead regarding animal companions, wondering if they were literal guides or symbolic representations of protective forces. Was the mummified cat truly believed to reanimate in the duat, padding silently beside your soul, or was its presence more about invoking the spirit of feline protection and vigilance? Regardless, the core belief remained. A cat, in some form, was essential for a successful journey. Gold, for all its material splendor, could buy you a grand tomb, perhaps even a more elaborate mummification, but it couldn't fight off a demon or point you towards the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. Gold is inert. It possesses no inherent spiritual power to navigate the cosmic unknown. It's a nice accessory, sure, but utterly useless when you're facing judgment before Osiris. The Egyptians understood that true value, when it came to the afterlife, lay not in glittering baubles but in spiritual efficacy. A mummified cat, therefore, was worth more than its weight in gold, not because of its material cost, but because of its perceived ability to safeguard the soul's eternal destiny. You couldn't bribe the devourer of souls with a gold necklace, but a cat, through its inherent nature and divine association, could potentially deter it. The cat provided comfort, protection, and guidance in a realm where such things were literally a matter of eternal life or spiritual oblivion. You trudge through the shadowy passages, the air thick with the whispers of the unseen, and then a soft, reassuring purr vibrates through the ethereal space beside you. It's your cat, a beacon of familiarity and strength, a silent promise that you are not alone in the vast, terrifying expanse of the afterlife. This profound belief highlights a fundamental difference in how the Egyptians valued things. Gold was earthly wealth, a symbol of power and status in the living world. Cats, however, represented something far more profound: spiritual protection, divine connection, and the promise of eternal companionship. They were guardians of the home, guardians of the harvest, and ultimately guardians of the very soul. And when you're talking about the journey to eternity, what could possibly be more valuable than that? Settle in, my friend, and let your mind drift back to the sun-drenched banks of the Nile, where the echoes of an ancient civilization still hum. We've talked about how cats were helpful, how they were divine, how they were even prepared for the afterlife. But now, let's peel back another fascinating layer of Egyptian society, one that truly underscores their unparalleled devotion: the very laws that govern the lives and deaths of these revered creatures. You might think your local animal welfare laws are progressive, but trust me, ancient Egypt was playing in a whole different league. Imagine, if you will, strolling through a bustling marketplace in Thebes, the air thick with the scent of roasted pigeon, fresh bread, and the sweet perfume of lotus flowers. You're navigating the throngs of people, the donkey carts, the vendors hawking their wares. Suddenly, a small, sleek cat darts across your path, perhaps chasing a stray mouse. In your haste, you trip, and your foot, inadvertently, catches the little creature. Now, in most cultures, you'd apologize, perhaps check if the cat was okay, and then move on with a slight flush of embarrassment. But in ancient Egypt, oh, my dear listener, you've just committed an act that could cost you everything. You see, the ancient Egyptians didn't just like their cats. They legally enshrined them with protections that would make modern lawyers weep with envy. We're not talking about a slap on the wrist or a small fine for animal cruelty. No, no, no. The laws of the claw, as we might playfully call them, were etched into the very fabric of their legal system with an iron stylus. To harm a cat, even by accident, was considered an act of profound sacrilege, an offense against the gods themselves. And the punishment? Well, let's just say it was the ultimate price. Yes, you heard that right. If you were found guilty of intentionally killing a cat, or even accidentally causing its demise, you faced the death penalty. Immediately, without trial in some accounts. Imagine the collective gasp of the crowd in that marketplace if your foot had, God forbid, truly hurt that cat. The scene would shift from a lively bazaar to a terrifying tribunal in mere moments. This wasn't just a law. It was a societal instinct, a deeply ingrained moral code. You could steal a loaf of bread and get off with a whipping, but touch a cat and you were done for. It makes you think twice about complaining about your cat knocking over your favorite vase. Doesn't it? Oh, Mittens, you adorable little lawbringer. That's fine. It's just a vase. The sheer severity of these laws is a mainstream historical fact, recounted by ancient Greek historians like Diodorus Siculus, who visited Egypt and was utterly astonished by the Egyptians' reverence for animals, especially cats. He famously documented an incident where a Roman citizen, during a period of delicate diplomatic relations, accidentally killed a cat. Despite the pharaoh's attempts to protect him and avoid an international incident, the enraged Egyptian populace, fueled by their deep religious convictions, dragged the unfortunate Roman out and lynched him on the spot. No appeals, no diplomatic immunity, no oops, my bad. The divine sanctity of the cat superseded all human laws and political considerations. This quirky tidbit truly illustrates the depth of their belief. An international incident was less important than avenging a cat. This wasn't just about protecting a pet. It was about upholding cosmic order. Cats were seen as embodiments of the goddess Bastet, and to harm them was to offend her, inviting divine wrath upon the entire community. Think of it like this. If you accidentally knocked over a statue of a revered deity in a modern-day sacred space, there would be consequences, right? Now amplify that by 1,000, imbue the statue with living, breathing purrs, and give it razor-sharp claws. The Egyptians believed that the well-being of their land, their harvests, and their families was intrinsically linked to the favor of the gods, and Bastet was a big player in that pantheon. You just didn't mess with her earthly representatives. These legal protections weren't just theoretical, they were actively enforced. Funerary texts and tomb reliefs often depict cats in serene, protected poses, reinforcing their untouchable status. The very notion of harming a cat would have been anathema, culturally unthinkable to most Egyptians. It wasn't just the fear of punishment that deterred them, but a genuine, profound respect and love. Imagine a society where the default setting for interacting with a feline was reverence, not casual indifference. It must have been a truly perfect world for cats. Historians still debate whether these laws were always strictly enforced, or if they served more as a powerful deterrent, a stark warning against any transgression. Were there secret cat killers who got away with it? Probably not for long, given the community's vigilance. The collective outrage would have been swift and overwhelming. You couldn't hide a dead cat in ancient Egypt. The entire neighborhood would know, and you'd likely be facing a very angry mob before the authorities even got involved. It's like a neighborhood watch, but instead of looking for suspicious characters, they're looking for anyone who even looks at a cat funny. The severity of these laws also highlights the economic value of cats, albeit indirectly. By protecting cats, the Egyptians were protecting their pest control, which in turn protected their grain stores. Grain was currency, it was survival, it was the very backbone of their civilization. So, harming a cat wasn't just a religious offense. It was an act of economic sabotage, a threat to the food supply. You were essentially messing with the national security. And you thought your taxes were high. Imagine if accidentally stepping on a cat meant you were bankrupting the country. This unparalleled legal framework for felines stands in stark contrast to how most other ancient civilizations treated animals. While some cultures revered certain animals, few, if any, enshrined them with such universal and severe legal protections. In many parts of the world, animals were property, food, or beasts of burden. In Egypt, cats were, in essence, citizens with rights, albeit rights protected by a very sharp sword. It speaks volumes about the unique Egyptian worldview, where the divine was not just in the heavens but walked among them on 4 paws. So, when you consider the laws of the claw, you begin to truly grasp the astonishing depth of the Egyptian bond with their cats. It wasn't just a fondness or a practical arrangement, or even just religious worship in a passive sense. It was an active, legally enforced, societal commitment to the well-being of these creatures, a commitment so strong that human life was deemed less valuable than a feline's. They didn't just value their cats more than gold. They valued them more than human life, at least in certain extreme circumstances. That, my dear listener, is a truly astonishing testament to an unbreakable bond. Now, imagine with me, if you will, the soft, dry whisper of ancient sands beneath your feet. You trudge through the desolate, yet strangely beautiful, landscape of the Egyptian desert, the sun a warm blanket on your skin, the only sound the distant, almost imagined, rustle of a forgotten breeze. You've heard tales, whispered across millennia, of places where the devotion to cats wasn't just a quaint custom, but an architectural marvel, a testament to love carved into the very earth. And as you round a gentle dune, you suddenly understand the true scale of that devotion. Before you, or rather, below you, stretches an opening, a dark maw in the earth, hinting at depths unknown. This isn't just a burial ground. It's a subterranean city, a sprawling necropolis, built not for pharaohs or nobles, but for felines. You're standing at the edge of one of ancient Egypt's awe-inspiring cat cemeteries, a place like the famous catacombs of Bastet or, more famously, Saqqara, where millions upon millions of mummified cats were laid to rest. Yes, you heard that right, millions. It's enough to make you wonder if they just had a buy one, get 1,000 free deal on mummification back then. Think about that for a moment. Not just a few beloved pets, carefully interred in a family tomb, but vast, dedicated burial sites, often stretching for acres underground, filled to the brim with the meticulously wrapped remains of cats. You descend into the cool, still air, the light from above struggling to penetrate the gloom. The air is thick with the dust of ages, and perhaps, if you listen very closely, the faintest echo of a collective purr from centuries past. It's an overwhelming sensation, standing amidst such profound evidence of a shared existence between humans and animals, a bond so deep it literally shaped the landscape. For centuries, these sites were lost to time, buried beneath shifting dunes. Then, in the late 19th century, farmers near Beni Hassan stumbled upon one such catacomb, and the world was utterly bewildered. Imagine the scene. You're digging in your field, expecting fertile soil, and instead, you hit a solid wall of cat, and then another and another. It must have been like discovering a giant, furry, archaeological jackpot. The sheer volume was staggering. One of the most significant discoveries occurred in 1888, when a local farmer in Saqqara uncovered a massive cat cemetery, revealing a labyrinth of tunnels packed with mummified felines. This wasn't just a few dozen. It was an estimated 300,000 cat mummies unearthed from just one section of the necropolis. And that was only the beginning. As you walk deeper into these hallowed halls, you see them countless bundles, neatly stacked, some in tiny sarcophagi, others simply wrapped in linen, their forms still discernible, tiny ears, the curve of a tail. It's a silent, solemn army of the departed, each one a testament to the belief that these creatures held a special, sacred place in the Egyptian worldview. It wasn't just about burial. These were often pilgrimage sites. People would come to these cemeteries, not just to mourn a lost companion, but to make offerings. They would purchase a mummified cat, not necessarily their own, as a votive offering to the goddess Bastet, hoping to gain her favor, her protection, her fertility. It was like going to a temple and buying a candle, but instead of a candle, you got a carefully preserved feline. A bit more commitment, perhaps, but certainly memorable. Historians still debate whether these cats were all cherished family members, or if a significant portion were part of a dedicated cat farming industry for ritualistic purposes. Were there ancient Egyptian cat breeders, raising felines specifically for this sacred destiny? It's a fascinating thought, implying an industry born purely out of religious demand. Some scholars suggest that, yes, there were probably temples that bred cats on a large scale to meet the demand for votive offerings, much like other animals were bred for sacrifice. You can almost picture the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a cat cafe, but instead of lattes and cuddles, it's linen wraps and eternal slumber. The meticulousness of the mummification process, even for these vast numbers, speaks volumes. While some mummies were found to contain only a few bones or even just a stick, suggesting a form of ancient bait and switch, or perhaps a more symbolic offering, the vast majority were carefully prepared. They were often wrapped in intricate patterns, sometimes adorned with painted eyes or even tiny, gilded masks. It wasn't about cutting corners. It was about honoring the form, the spirit, the essence of the feline. This wasn't just a quick burial. It was an investment of time, resources, and profound spiritual belief. It makes you wonder how many ancient Egyptian mummifiers had to deal with a particularly feisty client during the wrapping process. Just one more bandage, mittens, I promise. No, don't bite the embalming fluid. The scale of these cemeteries, the sheer number of mummified cats, transcends simple pet ownership. It points to a societal reverence, a collective understanding that these creatures were more than just animals. They were intermediaries, sacred beings, living embodiments of divine power. To dedicate such immense resources, labor, land, materials, and belief to their eternal rest, well, that's a level of commitment that truly puts things into perspective. You don't build cities for the dead if you don't believe their presence, even in the afterlife, holds immense significance. And this brings us back to our core question: why cats over gold? Because gold, for all its glitter and perceived value, couldn't offer what these cats did. Gold couldn't protect your granaries from vermin, ensuring your family didn't starve. Gold couldn't embody the nurturing spirit of Bastet, guarding your home and children. Gold couldn't accompany your soul into the afterlife, providing protection and guidance. Gold was a material possession, something you could hold in your hand. Cats, for the Egyptians, were something far more profound. They were spiritual guardians, living blessings, and symbols of a divine connection that permeated every aspect of their lives. From the mundane to the eternal, you emerge from the cool darkness of the catacombs, blinking in the desert sun, a new understanding settling over you. The silence of the sands now seems to hum with the echoes of countless purrs, a timeless testament to a bond so deep it literally shaped the earth. These cemeteries aren't just archaeological sites. They are monuments to an unparalleled love, a tangible demonstration that for ancient Egyptians, the spiritual, protective, and cultural value of their felines intrinsically overshadowed the material allure of any precious metal. They built cathedrals of dust and devotion, not for gold, but for the sacred, silent guardians of their world. Now settle in, because we're about to wander through the sun-drenched halls and shadowed tombs of ancient Egypt, not in search of glittering gold, but for something far more precious in their eyes: the humble yet utterly divine cat. You see, the ancient Egyptians didn't just like cats. They inscribed them into the very fabric of their visual world, turning every wall, every scroll, every tiny charm into a testament to their feline adoration. If you could somehow transport yourself back to that distant past, you'd find cats absolutely everywhere in their art, a constant, comforting, and deeply spiritual presence. It's like they were the original influencers, but instead of selfies, they were starring in murals that lasted millennia. Let's start with the very language itself. You might think hieroglyphs are all about pharaohs and pyramids, but guess what? Our furry friends made it into the alphabet. The hieroglyph for cat, or more accurately, a specific type of cat, often depicted sitting or walking, was a powerful symbol in its own right. It wasn't just a pictograph for the animal. It was used phonetically, too, representing sounds like MIW or MIT, echoing the very sound a cat makes. Imagine trying to explain that to a modern linguist. Yes, our word for meow is literally a picture of the thing that meows. It's elegantly simple, isn't it? You'd see this hieroglyph not just to denote the animal, but as part of longer words, embedding the essence of the cat into their written communication. This isn't just a casual sketch. It's a foundational element of their script, showcasing how deeply integrated cats were into their conceptual framework of the world. It's almost as if they were saying, cats are so important, they're part of how we write. And you thought your cat demanding breakfast was pushy, but the true spectacle, the place where you truly feel the warmth of Egyptian devotion, is in their tomb paintings. As you, hypothetically, Step into a meticulously painted tomb. The air cool and still. You're not just looking at art. You're peering into the intimate domestic lives and spiritual beliefs of the deceased. And what do you see? Cats, of course. They're everywhere, often depicted in remarkably lifelike detail. Sometimes under the chair of the deceased. A serene, watchful presence, paws neatly tucked, tail curled. This isn't just a decorative flourish. It speaks volumes about their role as cherished companions. You see them depicted with their owners, sometimes even wearing elaborate collars or tiny earrings, which, let's be honest, is a look most modern cats would probably tolerate for about 3.7 seconds before attempting a dramatic escape. But here, they seem perfectly content, embodying domestic bliss and companionship. Historians still argue whether these specific depictions always represented actual pets or were more generalized symbols of comfort and protection. But either way, the message of affection is clear. Beyond the cozy domestic scenes, cats also appear in more active, vibrant contexts. You might spot them in hunting scenes, agile and focused, leaping through papyrus thickets to catch birds for their human companions. This isn't just about providing food. It's about the cat's innate hunting prowess being harnessed, its natural instincts revered. It's a pragmatic acknowledgement of their skill, elevated to an artistic, almost spiritual level. Imagine trying to get your own fluffy house panther to participate in a coordinated hunt. You'd probably end up with a hairball and a lecture on personal space. Yet, in these ancient murals, the cats are depicted as willing, capable partners. Their movements fluid and powerful, a testament to their utility and grace. This mainstream historical fact, their depiction in hunting scenes, underscores their dual role, both beloved pet and valuable contributor to survival. Then there are the amulets. Oh, the amulets! If you were to sift through the archaeological finds, you discover countless tiny cat figures crafted from faience, carnelian, lapis lazuli, or even gold. These weren't just cute trinkets to hang on your keychain. They were powerful protective charms. Imagine clutching a smooth, cool cat amulet in your hand, feeling its weight, knowing it was meant to ward off evil spirits, bring good fortune, or invoke the benevolent power of Bastet. These amulets were worn by the living, buried with the dead, and often placed strategically in homes. Each one, a miniature masterpiece, capturing the elegant silhouette of a sitting cat, sometimes with kittens, sometimes with a sistrum, a musical rattle. A clear nod to Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, and protection. It's like they had their own version of lucky cat charms, but with far more profound spiritual implications than just attracting wealth. Though, let's be honest, who wouldn't want a tiny, ancient cat charm to bring them good vibes? The omnipresence of cats in Egyptian art goes beyond just paintings and amulets. You'd find them sculpted in grander forms too, though often smaller than human figures, reflecting their divine yet earthly connection. Statues of Bastet, often depicted as a woman with a cat's head, are striking, but so too are the purely feline statues, sometimes in bronze, with inlaid eyes of quartz or obsidian, gleaming with an almost unsettlingly lifelike intensity. These weren't just representations. They were conduits, sacred objects that invited the divine presence into the mundane world. You might even find cat figures integrated into furniture, pottery, or as decorative elements on cosmetic jars and mirror handles. It's as if every surface was an opportunity to pay homage to the cat. There's even a quirky tidbit about some cat statues having tiny, almost invisible, holes drilled into them, leading some scholars to speculate they might have been used to hold offerings, perhaps milk or tiny bits of food, for the feline spirit they embodied. Imagine the dedication. This widespread artistic adoration isn't just about aesthetics. It's a profound declaration of the cat's ubiquitous sacred presence. Every time an Egyptian artist depicted a cat, whether in a grand tomb or on a small personal charm, they were reinforcing its status as a protector, a companion, a symbol of divine grace, and a vital part of the cosmic order. It's a constant visual affirmation that these creatures were more than just animals. They were living symbols, walking embodiments of values the Egyptians held dear: fertility, protection, domestic harmony, and the gentle touch of the divine. They didn't just value cats more than gold. They valued them in a way that gold could never represent. Gold was material wealth, shiny and beautiful, yes, but cats were something else entirely. A spiritual wealth, woven into the very fabric of their homes, their afterlife, and their artistic expression. So, as you drift off, imagine those ancient artists, with steady hands and deep reverence, painting their beloved felines onto eternity, ensuring that even in the quiet of the tomb, the purr of a cat could still be felt. You find yourself standing, metaphorically speaking, within the cool, earthy confines of an ancient Egyptian granary. The air is thick with the sweet, nutty scent of stored grains, barley, wheat, emmer piled high in vast, conical mounds, stretching almost to the shadowed ceiling. Imagine the sheer volume of it. Enough to feed bustling cities, to brew countless jugs of beer, to bake endless loaves of bread. This, my friend, is the true gold of ancient Egypt. Not the glittering ingots you might envision in a pharaoh's tomb, but the sustenance that fueled an entire civilization. You can practically hear the gentle rustle of the dry husks as the weight of the harvest settles, a quiet hum of prosperity. Now picture, if you will, the unseen enemy lurking in these very shadows. The ancient world, devoid of modern pesticides and hermetically sealed containers, was a veritable feast for the tiny, scurrying adversaries of agriculture. Mice and, far more menacingly, rats. You can almost feel the prickle of their whiskers in the dark. Hear the insidious gnawing that could, over time, decimate a season's hard-won bounty. These weren't just a nuisance. They were a catastrophic threat. A single pair of rats, given enough food and shelter, can produce hundreds of offspring in a year, and each one of those tiny, hungry mouths is a miniature, relentless destroyer. They don't just eat. They contaminate, they chew through sacks, they tunnel through foundations. Imagine the horror of waking up to find a significant portion of your family's winter food supply rendered inedible, gnawed to dust, or fouled by droppings. It's enough to make you shiver, isn't it? Like finding someone's eaten all the snacks you specifically bought for your movie night, but on a civilization-ending scale. This is where our furry, four-legged heroes enter the economic stage, not with a flourish of trumpets, but with the silent, predatory grace of a shadow. The ancient Egyptians, with their pragmatic brilliance, understood that the most effective solution to a biological problem was often a biological one. And what better predator for rodents than the swift, stealthy, and utterly dedicated domestic cat? You see them, in your mind's eye, a sleek shape melting into the granary's gloom, eyes gleaming with focused intent. They weren't just pets. They were living, breathing, purring pest control. Their very presence was a deterrent, their hunting prowess a constant, tireless safeguard. No need for complicated traps or noxious fumigants. Just a well-fed, highly motivated feline security guard on duty 24/7. It was the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it solution, except it occasionally demanded a head scratch. Consider the sheer, tangible value of their service. A successful harvest meant everything to ancient Egypt. This mainstream historical fact cannot be overstated. The Egyptian economy was fundamentally agrarian. The annual flooding of the Nile brought fertile silt, allowing for abundant crops, primarily wheat and barley. These grains weren't just food. They were the very bedrock of the economy, serving as a form of currency, a means of taxation, and the foundation for trade. If you wanted to pay your workers, you paid them in grain. If you wanted to fund a military campaign, you drew from your grain reserves. If you wanted to build a pyramid, you needed grain to feed the thousands of laborers. Grain was power, stability, and the lifeblood of the empire. Now imagine the alternative. Granaries overrun with vermin. The loss of even a small percentage of the harvest due to pests would have ripple effects throughout the entire society. Less food means higher prices, potential famine, social unrest, and a weakened workforce. It means fewer resources for monumental building projects, for maintaining the army, for supporting the priestly class. It's a domino effect of economic instability, all starting with a few too many nibbling rodents. So, when you consider the cat, you're not just looking at a cute companion. You're looking at the unsung hero preventing widespread economic collapse. They were the original food security specialists, long before anyone coined the term. They effectively safeguarded the nation's strategic reserves. This is where the true value proposition becomes clear. Gold, while beautiful and symbolic of wealth, is a static asset. It sits there, glinting, impressive but inert. It doesn't grow, it doesn't feed people, and it certainly doesn't hunt rats. Grain, on the other hand, is dynamic. It is life, it is growth, it is the potential for future prosperity. The cats, by protecting this vital resource, were indirectly ensuring the very survival and flourishing of the Egyptian state. Their value wasn't measured in carats, but in countless bushels of saved grain, in the stable bellies of the populace, in the uninterrupted flow of trade, and in the continued strength of the pharaoh's rule. You could almost hear a savvy Egyptian accountant saying, "Why invest in more gold when a few well-placed felines can ensure our existing wealth doesn't literally get eaten away?" The concept of a cat as an economic guardian might seem unusual from a modern perspective, but in the context of an agrarian society, it makes perfect sense. They were a living, purring insurance policy against famine. And this wasn't just a casual benefit. It was a fundamental part of their integrated role in Egyptian life. They were so effective, so vital, that their presence became inextricably linked to the very notion of prosperity. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians fully quantified the exact economic benefits of their cat population, or if it was simply an intuitive understanding based on centuries of practical observation. But the consensus is clear. Their contribution was immense. Consider a quirky tidbit. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in large-scale agriculture, developing sophisticated irrigation techniques and granary designs. But even with all their engineering marvels, they couldn't build a granary that was 100% impervious to pests. That's where the organic, flexible, and highly motivated pest control unit, the cat, came in. It's like building the most advanced server farm in the world, then realizing you still need antivirus software. The cats were the ultimate, self-updating, low-maintenance antivirus for their agricultural operating system. So, when you reflect on why cats were valued more than gold, remember this: gold was a symbol of wealth, but cats protected the actual, tangible wealth that made Egypt thrive. Gold could buy you things, but it couldn't save your harvest from a relentless tide of rodents. The cats weren't just protecting grain. They were protecting the stability of the entire empire, ensuring that the wheels of commerce kept turning, that the people were fed, and that the pharaohs could continue to dream big. They were the silent, four-legged guardians of Egypt's economic heart, an irreplaceable asset whose true worth far outshone any glittering metal. They were, in essence, the original, highly effective, and exceedingly adorable chief financial officers of ancient Egypt. You wake, not to the blare of an alarm, but perhaps to the gentle, rhythmic purr of a warm, furry weight nestled against your chest. You stretch, and a sleek, elegant form stretches beside you, a silent guardian even in slumber. This isn't just a modern fantasy. It was the everyday reality, the very fabric of existence, for ancient Egyptians. You see, their cats weren't merely pets in the way we understand them today, pampered companions who occasionally grace us with their presence. Oh no, these creatures were woven so deeply into the tapestry of Egyptian society that their presence echoed in every corner of life, shaping customs, influencing beliefs, and even dictating the quiet rhythms of the home. It's like trying to imagine a modern home without Wi-Fi, utterly unthinkable for the Egyptians to live without their feline friends. You walk through the bustling market, and you notice the small clay figurines of cats adorning stalls, not just for sale, but as protective charms. You hear the chatter of voices, and perhaps, if you listen closely enough, you'll catch a mother calling her child Mayat, a common and affectionate name, derived directly from the Egyptian word for cat, myo or mao, mimicking the very sound these creatures made. Imagine naming your child Woof Woof or Chirp Chirp today. It gives you a tiny glimpse into the sheer, pervasive normalcy of feline integration. It wasn't just a cute nickname. It was a nod to the qualities these animals embodied: agility, grace, and a certain quiet dignity. You might even find yourself adopting a cat-like posture when you sit, an unconscious imitation of their poised elegance. Just kidding, probably not unless you've been practicing your sunbathing stretches. consider the superstitions that would have permeated your daily life. If a cat suddenly appeared at your doorstep, you wouldn't shoo it away. You'd welcome it as a blessing, perhaps even a divine messenger. A purring cat was not just content. It was a sign of peace and well-being in the home, a soft, rumbling affirmation that all was right with the world. But if a cat died in your home, especially unexpectedly, you would feel a profound sense of foreboding, a chill that went deeper than simple grief. You would understand that a protective presence had departed, leaving a void that felt both personal and cosmic. It was a bit like having your home security system suddenly go offline, but with far more spiritual implications and a lot more fur. The integration of cats went beyond the domestic sphere and into the grand public rituals that defined Egyptian life. You would undoubtedly participate in, or at least witness, the magnificent festivals dedicated to Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, joy, and protector against evil. The most famous of these was the annual pilgrimage to Bastet, her cult center in the Nile Delta. Imagine the scene. You would join thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of fellow Egyptians, all making their way to the city, often by boat, singing, dancing, and making music. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, described these festivals with awe, noting the sheer scale of the celebrations, the offerings, and the uninhibited revelry. It was like a massive ancient Woodstock, but with more papyrus and significantly more cats. People would bring mummified cats as offerings, not just to the goddess, but as a direct connection to her divine essence, a way to show their devotion and seek her blessings. The air would be thick with the scent of incense, the sound of sistrums, sacred rattles, and the joyous cries of the pilgrims, all in honor of the feline deity. This deep reverence extended even to death, not just for humans, but for cats themselves. You would mourn a beloved family cat with the same intensity you would a human family member, albeit with different rituals. The quirky tidbit that often surprises modern minds is the custom of shaving off your eyebrows as a sign of mourning for a deceased cat. Imagine telling your boss today, "Sorry, can't come in. My cat Mitten's passed, and I'm in the process of debrowing." It might not fly, but for an ancient Egyptian, it was a perfectly understandable, if visually striking, public declaration of grief. This wasn't just for the pharaohs or the elite. It was a widespread custom, a tangible demonstration of the profound emotional bond that transcended species. You would carefully prepare your cat for its journey to the afterlife, ensuring it had everything it needed, just as you would for a human. This wasn't merely about sentimentality. It was rooted in the belief that these creatures, imbued with divine qualities, would continue to protect and guide you, even beyond the veil of death. The presence of cats permeated Egyptian culture to such an extent that it even influenced their art and symbolism in ways you might not immediately recognize. You see them depicted in tomb paintings, not just as pets, but often as active participants in the afterlife, hunting birds or protecting the deceased. Their elegant forms inspired jewelry, amulets, and even the design of furniture. The very hieroglyph for cat became synonymous with concepts of protection and good fortune. You couldn't escape their influence. It was in the air you breathed, the stories you told, and the symbols you revered. Now, you might be thinking, were they just worshipping the animals themselves? And that's a fair question, one that has led to a fascinating scholarly debate among Egyptologists. Historians still argue whether the reverence for cats was a direct, literal worship of the animal as a god, or if it was more nuanced, a recognition that the divine spirit of Bastet resided within or manifested through these earthly felines. You see, the Egyptians were masters of symbolism. They often saw gods manifest through specific animals, not necessarily as the animal itself, but as a living vessel for divine power. So, while you would treat a cat with immense respect and veneration, you were likely honoring the goddess Bastet through the cat, rather than prostrating yourself before every stray you encountered. It's a subtle but important distinction, much like appreciating a beautiful painting as a masterpiece without necessarily worshipping the canvas and paint themselves. In essence, the feline echoes in Egyptian culture were everywhere. They were the silent guardians of your home, the playful companions of your children, the sacred symbols of your gods, and the very embodiment of protection and grace. Their presence shaped your customs, from how you mourned to how you celebrated. It wasn't just about utility. It was about a profound, almost spiritual integration into the very fabric of Egyptian identity. You couldn't imagine life without them, because to do so would be to imagine a life devoid of protection, joy, and a connection to the divine. Now, settle in even deeper, if you can, and let your mind drift back to the sun-drenched banks of the Nile. We've journeyed through the astounding depth of Egyptian reverence for their feline friends, exploring their roles as pest controllers, divine embodiments, and cherished companions. But here, in this quiet moment, we arrive at the very heart of our question. Why exactly did these ancient people value their purring protectors more than gold? You might be thinking, gold? Really? That shiny, universally coveted metal? And yes, really. You see, the ancient Egyptians, with their profound understanding of life's true necessities, held a perspective that, in our modern, often materially driven world, might seem utterly counterintuitive. Imagine, if you will, the glint of sunlight on a freshly mined nugget of gold. It's beautiful, isn't it? It shimmers with an almost otherworldly glow, promising wealth, power, and prestige. For the Egyptians, gold was indeed precious. It was considered the flesh of the gods, particularly Ra, the sun god, and was used extensively in religious artifacts, funerary masks, like the iconic one for Tutankhamun, a mainstream historical fact that still dazzles you with its opulence and royal adornments. You could fashion it into breathtaking jewelry, intricate amulets, or even encase the tips of obelisks to catch the first rays of dawn. It was a symbol of immortality, its unblemished, untarnishing nature mirroring the eternal life they so deeply aspired to. You could trade it for goods, use it to pay artisans, or simply hoard it in vast, glittering caches within royal treasuries. It represented status, an undeniable mark of one's position in the grand hierarchy of the Nile Valley. But here's the quiet little secret about gold. It's inert. It lies there, beautiful and heavy, doing precisely nothing. It cannot hunt a scurrying mouse that threatens to gnaw through your grain stores. It cannot hiss at a venomous snake slithering into your child's bed. It cannot purr a soothing rhythm against your chest after a long, arduous day under the scorching sun. It offers no warmth, no companionship, no active protection. It is, for all its material splendor, utterly passive. It's like having a magnificent jewel-encrusted safe that's empty inside. Beautiful to look at, but ultimately, what's its true value if it doesn't safeguard what matters most? Now, shift your gaze from the gleaming gold to the soft, intelligent eyes of a domestic cat. This creature, often no bigger than your forearm, was a living, breathing, dynamic force. Its value wasn't symbolic. It was intrinsic, active, and absolutely indispensable. You see, the very foundation of ancient Egyptian civilization rested upon agriculture. The annual inundation of the Nile brought fertile silt, allowing bountiful harvests of wheat and barley. This grain was life itself, food, trade, the basis of their economy, the very fuel for their magnificent empire. But where there's grain, there are pests. Mice, rats, snakes, scorpions. These weren't just nuisances. They were existential threats. A single rat infestation could decimate a year's harvest, leading to famine, disease, and societal collapse. Enter the cat. With its silent, stealthy movements and lightning-fast reflexes, it was the ultimate guardian of the granary. You didn't need to pay it or cajole it or even train it much. It simply did what it was instinctively wired to do: hunt. Imagine the quiet relief you'd feel, knowing that your precious, hard-earned grain, the very sustenance of your family and community, was protected by these vigilant, four-legged sentinels. A cat was, in essence, your living, breathing, purring insurance policy against starvation. It was the original pest control, far more effective and certainly more charming than any ancient equivalent of sticky traps or poison. So, while gold could represent wealth, the cat actively preserved the source of that wealth. One was a display, the other was a defense. Beyond the purely practical, economic value, you must remember the spiritual dimension. For the Egyptians, the world was imbued with divine presence. Gods and goddesses were not distant, abstract concepts. They were interwoven into the very fabric of daily life. And the cat, with its mysterious grace, its nocturnal habits, and its uncanny ability to land on its feet, seemed to embody something truly special. It was the living manifestation of Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, joy, and protection. You didn't just have a pet. You had a small, furry avatar of a benevolent deity padding around your home. You didn't just feel affection. You felt a profound sense of gratitude and reverence. Think about it, gold, for all its divine association as the flesh of the gods, remained a static object. It was a conduit, a vessel. But the cat was the divine presence, or at least a powerful, living connection to it. Poured Bastet's blessings into your home. It guarded your children with the goddess's watchful eyes. It offered comfort and companionship, attributes that no amount of inert metal could ever provide. This spiritual connection elevated the cat from a mere animal to a sacred member of the household, bridging the gap between the mundane and the divine. You couldn't pray to a gold necklace for protection from a scorpion, but you could certainly feel a sense of divine watchfulness from the cat napping by your hearth. This holistic value, the intertwined practical, spiritual, and emotional, is where the cat truly overshadowed gold. Gold was a material possession. The cat was a living partner in survival and spiritual well-being. It's almost like comparing a very expensive, beautiful, but non-functional sculpture of a car to a perfectly running, reliable vehicle that gets you everywhere you need to go, safely and comfortably. One is art, the other is utility, and in a world where survival was a daily challenge, utility often trumped mere aesthetics. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians' reverence for cats was a form of true worship or simply an extreme form of respect for a beneficial animal. But what's clear is that the distinction blurred for them. To harm a cat was not just to destroy property. It was to commit a sacrilege, a crime against the divine order. You remember the severe legal protections we discussed? That wasn't just about protecting an animal. It was about protecting a living embodiment of the sacred, a guardian of the home, and a crucial component of their agricultural prosperity. Contrast that with gold. You could steal gold, melt it down, remint it, and while certainly a crime, it didn't carry the same existential spiritual dread as harming a cat. Stealing gold might land you in jail. Accidentally killing a cat could, in some cases, lead to mob justice. Now that's a quirky tidbit for your bedtime history, isn't it? A spontaneous, furious crowd dealing out their own brand of justice for a feline friend. The Egyptians understood that true wealth wasn't just about accumulation of shiny objects. It was about security, health, sustenance, and spiritual harmony. Gold could buy you things, but it couldn't buy you the quiet, rhythmic purr that eased your anxieties, or the fierce, silent protection against the unseen threats of the night. Couldn't bring the blessings of a goddess into your home. Couldn't be a companion in life and, as they believed, a guide in the afterlife. So, when you consider the choice between a gleaming pile of gold and a sleek, watchful cat, the Egyptian perspective becomes clear. Gold was valuable, yes, but it was a passive, material asset. The cat was an active, living, multidimensional asset, an economic guardian, a spiritual protector, an emotional anchor, and a beloved family member. Its value was woven into the very fabric of their daily existence, ensuring their survival, enriching their spiritual lives, and bringing comfort to their homes. It wasn't merely a preference. It was a profound understanding of what truly sustained them, physically and spiritually, far beyond the transient allure of a glittering metal. You see, the shine of gold was fleeting compared to the enduring spirit of the cat. You drift from the ancient sands, the whispers of pharaohs and the rustle of papyrus still echoing in your ears, and you find yourself, quite unexpectedly, in a modern living room. Perhaps it's your own. You glance around, and there, curled on a sun-drenched cushion, or perhaps perched regally on a bookshelf, is a creature that looks remarkably familiar. A cat. You watch as it stretches, a slow, languid uncoiling of muscle and fur, before settling back into a state of profound contentment, occasionally opening one eye to survey its domain, which, let's be honest, is largely your domain. This, my friend, is where the ancient legacy truly purrs on. You see, the Egyptians didn't just like cats. They set a precedent, a cultural template for feline adoration that, like a persistent hairball, we simply can't quite shake. When you coo over a fluffy kitten video online, or spend an exorbitant amount on organic, grain-free salmon pâté for your discerning house panther, you're not just being a doting pet parent. You're subtly, perhaps unknowingly, performing a ritual passed down through millennia. It's a quiet homage to Bastet, a gentle echo of the reverence once reserved for living gods. Think about it. We don't literally worship our cats anymore, or at least, not in the sense of building temples to them, though, if you've ever seen a cat tree that costs more than your first car, you might beg to differ. But the spirit of that ancient veneration is alive and well. You watch your cat meticulously groom itself, then leap gracefully onto a counter it knows it's not supposed to be on, and you can almost hear the faint rustle of ancient linen, the distant chant of priests. There's an undeniable air of self-importance, a regal detachment, that cats have mastered. They demand respect, and by Jove, we give it to them. You find yourself tiptoeing around a sleeping cat, rather than disturbing its sacred slumber, a silent testament to its unassailable authority in your home. It's like a tiny, furry despot, ruling your schedule with an iron paw. You're merely the humble servant, tasked with opening cans and providing lap space on demand. The sheer economic footprint of our modern cat obsession is staggering. You step into any pet supply store, and you're greeted by aisles dedicated solely to feline comfort and amusement. From ergonomically designed litter boxes to laser pointers that promise endless entertainment, for the human, mostly, to gourmet foods that sound more appealing than your own dinner, the market for cat products is booming. This isn't just about providing for a pet. It's about catering to a tiny, furry monarch who expects nothing less than the best. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, a modern-day tribute system where you, the loyal subject, willingly hand over your gold or, your credit card for the privilege of their companionship. You might grumble about the cost of that fancy catnip toy, but deep down, you know it's a small price to pay for the occasional, fleeting head bonk of affection. And then there's the internet. The internet. If ancient Egyptians had the internet, it would have been 90% cat memes and glorious, high-definition videos of Bastet doing absolutely nothing. You scroll through social media, and what do you see? Cats. Everywhere. Grumpy cats, majestic cats, cats failing spectacularly, cats sleeping in improbable positions. The viral cat video, the influencer cat with millions of followers, the endless stream of adorable feline content. This is our digital cat cemetery, a vast, ever-expanding monument to our enduring fascination. You find yourself sharing a particularly ridiculous cat gif with a friend, giggling at its absurdity, and you're participating in a global, unspoken ritual of feline appreciation that traces its lineage back to the Nile. It's a modern form of hieroglyphics, etched not in stone, but in pixels. Consider the breeds we cherish today. While the exact lineage can be a bit fuzzy, some modern breeds are thought to carry echoes of those ancient Egyptian companions. The elegant Abyssinian, with its lithe body and alert ears, or the spotted Egyptian Mau, are often cited as descendants, or at least close relatives, of the cats that roamed the temples and granaries of the pharaohs. You look into their intelligent, almond-shaped eyes, and you can almost see the desert sun reflecting in their depths, a timeless connection to their ancestral home. Historians still argue whether these modern breeds are direct genetic lines or merely phenotypic similarities, but the romantic notion persists, adding another layer to their mystique. The way we treat our cats, the level of care and medical intervention we provide, also speaks volumes. You rush your cat to the vet for a sniffle. You discuss complex dietary needs with a specialist. You invest in preventative care that would make an ancient Egyptian embalmer raise an eyebrow, in admiration, perhaps. This dedication to their well-being, this profound desire to extend their lives and ensure their comfort, is a direct echo of the lengths the Egyptians went to protect their sacred felines. They were not just animals. They were family, protectors, and sources of profound comfort. You feel a pang of worry when your cat is a little off, a deep sense of responsibility for this small, furry being who has somehow taken up residence in the very core of your heart. And what about the cat cafes? You might find yourself in a cozy establishment, sipping a latte while a ginger tabby naps on your lap, or a sleek black cat weaves through your legs. These havens, where you pay for the privilege of simply being with cats, are a curious modern phenomenon. Yet, they too, in their own quirky way, reflect that ancient desire for constant feline companionship, the need to be in the presence of these calming, mysterious creatures. You watch them interact, observing their subtle hierarchies and their inexplicable charm, and you understand on some primal level why the Egyptians found such peace in their company. It's a temporary escape from the modern hustle, a moment of quiet contemplation facilitated by a purring presence. Even our superstitions about cats carry faint echoes of their ancient past. Black cats, once revered in Egypt, became symbols of bad luck in medieval Europe, a testament to how profoundly their image could shift. Yet, in many cultures, a cat crossing your path can still be seen as a sign, good or ill. This persistent belief in their mystical influence, their connection to something beyond the mundane, hints at their long history as creatures imbued with special powers. It's a quirky little tidbit, a reminder that even when their status changed, their power to evoke strong feelings and beliefs never truly faded. You might chuckle at the idea, but you still instinctively avoid stepping on a black cat's tail, just in case. So, as you settle back, perhaps with your own cat now kneading biscuits on your chest, you can truly appreciate the enduring legacy of ancient Egypt's feline fascination. It wasn't just a historical footnote. It was a cultural cornerstone that continues to shape our world. The profound respect, the deep affection, the willingness to elevate them to a unique status. It all started there on the banks of the Nile. From the grand temples of Bastet to the humble cat bed in your living room, the journey of the cat has been one of consistent elevation. You might jokingly call your cat king or queen of the house, but in a way you're not far off. You're simply acknowledging the ancient truth that these creatures, with their enigmatic eyes and silent paws, possess a quality that makes us, their loyal human companions, truly value them more than any glittering pile of gold. You might be forgiven, as you drift further into the history of this fascinating civilization, for thinking that the ancient Egyptians simply worshipped cats, like full-on, bowing down to every purring feline with offerings of tuna and tiny feathered toys. You might imagine them constructing colossal statues to ordinary tabbies, perhaps even debating the best way to get a particularly finicky Siamese to grant them a good harvest. And while their devotion was undeniably profound, perhaps even a little extra by modern standards, it's crucial to understand the subtle, yet significant, distinction between their reverence and what we typically consider idol worship. It's less about them believing every whiskered creature was a god, and more about recognizing the divine within the whiskered creature. Think of it less like worshipping a specific cat named Mittens, and more like acknowledging that Mittens is a living, breathing embodiment of divine grace and protection, a walking, purring miracle. Imagine, if you will, the serene silence of a moonlit Egyptian home. You hear the soft scritch-scratch of a mouse in the corner, a tiny invader threatening precious grain. Then, a shadow moves, swift and silent, and with a barely audible pounce, the threat is neutralized. To the ancient Egyptian, this wasn't just a cat doing its job. It was a manifestation of divine order, a tangible act of protection from the chaos that constantly threatened their survival. The cat, in this moment, was not the god itself, but the instrument of the gods, a living symbol of their benevolent watchfulness. It's a bit like us saying, "Oh, thank goodness for that police officer," rather than, "I worship that police officer," though the Egyptians took it a few thousand steps further in terms of spiritual connection. They saw the gods' qualities, their swiftness, their fertility, their protective instincts, reflected perfectly in the feline form. This nuanced understanding is key to grasping the true depth of their bond. It wasn't a blind, unthinking adoration of any cat. It was a profound respect for the qualities cats embodied, qualities that resonated deeply with their spiritual beliefs and practical needs. You see, the Egyptians lived in a world where the divine permeated every aspect of existence. The Nile wasn't just a river. It was the lifeblood given by the gods. The sun wasn't just a star. It was the god Ra traversing the sky. In this worldview, it was only natural that creatures displaying such remarkable protective instincts, such serene independence, and such prolific fertility would be seen as touched by the divine. Mainstream historical fact confirms this. Ancient Egyptian religion was deeply animistic and polytheistic, often associating specific animals with particular deities, not as the deity itself, but as its sacred animal or a vessel for its spirit. The ibex was sacred to Thoth, the falcon to Horus, and so on. Cats, with their unique blend of domesticity and wild grace, simply earned the top spot in the popularity contest. They were the rock stars of the animal kingdom, but not the lead singer of the divine choir itself. Consider Bastet, the goddess we've already met, often depicted with the head of a lioness or a domestic cat. When an Egyptian revered Bastet, they weren't necessarily worshipping a specific cat that sat on their lap. They were worshipping the concept of protection, fertility, joy, and the home, all personified by Bastet, whose essence was beautifully captured by the feline form. The cat in their home was a living, breathing reminder of Bastet's presence, a tiny, purring shrine, if you will. It's a bit like looking at a beautiful painting of a saint and feeling a spiritual connection, rather than believing the canvas itself is the saint. Though, I suppose if the painting suddenly started meowing for treats, that might change things a little. The reverence for cats also stemmed from a very practical place. While we might joke about cats being lazy, demanding overlords, the ancient Egyptians knew better. These creatures were the frontline defense against pests that could decimate their grain stores, spread disease, and even threaten their lives. Snakes? Scorpions? Oh my! A healthy cat population meant healthy people and a healthy economy. So, when an Egyptian saw a cat diligently patrolling their granary, they didn't just see a pest controller. They saw a guardian, a protector of their very livelihood, a gift from the gods that ensured their survival. It's hard to worship an idol that doesn't actually do anything for you, beyond looking pretty. These cats were active participants in their society, pulling their weight, even if that weight was mostly just fluff and a superior attitude. Historians still argue whether the reverence for cats was a top-down religious decree or an organic, grassroots phenomenon born from daily interaction and the undeniable practical benefits. Was it the priests who said, "Hey, let's make cats sacred"? Or did the common folk simply observe their usefulness and project divine qualities onto them? Perhaps it was a bit of both. A symbiotic relationship where practicality reinforced piety, and piety elevated practicality. Either way, the result was a bond unlike any other. And then there's the quirky tidbit that beautifully illustrates this personal, deeply felt connection. The tradition of shaving one's eyebrows in mourning for a deceased family cat. Imagine this. You wake up one morning, and your beloved feline companion has crossed the rainbow bridge, or, more accurately for them, the do-it. Your grief is so profound, so deeply personal, that you express it visibly by altering your appearance. This wasn't a mandated religious ritual for every lost animal. It was an intensely personal act of mourning, indicative of the cat's status as a cherished family member, not just a sacred object. It wasn't about appeasing a god. It was about honoring a life, a bond, a presence that had enriched your own. It speaks volumes about the emotional investment they had in these creatures. If you lost your favorite mug, you wouldn't shave your eyebrows, would you? Unless it was a really good mug, perhaps one that also kept mice out of your pantry. The Egyptians understood that true divinity transcended the physical form. They saw the divine spark in all creation, but cats, for their unique combination of grace, independence, fertility, and pest control prowess, became particularly potent symbols. They weren't worshipping the physical cat, but the essence of the divine that the cat so perfectly encapsulated. It's a subtle distinction, but a crucial one. It means their reverence was not a primitive, superstitious fear of an animal, but a sophisticated recognition of the interconnectedness of their world, where the practical and the spiritual were inextricably linked. They saw the god's hand in the swift pounce, the comforting purr, the serene gaze. So, when you picture an ancient Egyptian and their cat, don't imagine a worshipper and an idol. Instead, envision a partnership, a profound symbiosis. Imagine a human who deeply respects a creature that provides tangible protection and embodies intangible divine qualities. It was a relationship built on mutual benefit, spiritual resonance, and an undeniable affection that transcended the simple material value of gold. Gold was shiny, yes, and useful for trade, but it couldn't keep your granary safe from rodents, nor could it purr contentedly on your lap, radiating a sense of peace and security. The cat, in its quiet dignity, was a living testament to the god's care, a furry conduit of blessings. And that, my friend, is a value that gold simply cannot buy. You settle deeper into your pillow, the softest whisper of a breeze seeming to drift through your room, carrying with it the scent of ancient sands and the faint, comforting purr of a very old friend. We've journeyed together through the sun-baked landscapes of ancient Egypt, peering into homes and temples, tombs and bustling marketplaces, all to understand a truth that might, at first glance, seem utterly bewildering. Why cats were held in higher esteem than even the most glittering precious gold. As you reflect on our adventure, you begin to grasp the extraordinary depth of this bond. It wasn't a fleeting fancy, a passing trend like a new social media challenge. It was a profound, deeply woven tapestry of mutual respect and unbreakable connection. From their humble beginnings as diligent pest controllers, keeping granaries safe from scurrying rodents and homes free from venomous snakes. Basically, the original, furrier, and far more adorable home security system, cats ascended to the highest echelons of Egyptian society. They weren't just useful, they became divine. They weren't just pets. They were partners in the truest sense of the word. You consider the glittering allure of gold. It's beautiful, isn't it? It reflects light, it's malleable, it's rare. You can hoard it, wear it, even bury it with you. But try cuddling a gold bar after a long day. It's just not the same, is it? Gold is inert. It offers no warmth, no purr, no playful pounce, no silent companionship as you drift off to sleep. It doesn't stalk through the night, protecting your family from unseen dangers. It certainly doesn't greet you with a happy headbutt when you return home. The ancient Egyptians, in their profound wisdom, understood this fundamental difference. Gold represented static wealth, a symbol of power and status, yes, but cats represented dynamic life. They were living, breathing guardians of the home, the harvest, and even the soul. Imagine the peace of mind you'd feel, knowing that your fields, the very source of your family's sustenance, were being diligently patrolled by sleek, agile hunters. Or the comfort of a purring cat curled on your lap after a long day working under the relentless Egyptian sun. This wasn't merely about utility. It evolved into a deeply emotional and spiritual connection. The Egyptians saw in cats a reflection of qualities they revered: grace, independence, fertility, and quiet strength. These were creatures that moved with an almost supernatural stealth, seeing in the dark, defending their territory with fierce courage. It's no wonder they began to associate them with the divine, culminating in the widespread worship of Bastet, the cat-headed goddess of home, fertility, and protection. Talk about a glow-up, right? From barn cat to deity. The bond was undeniably mutual. What did the Egyptians offer in return for this invaluable service and companionship? Everything. They provided food, shelter, and comfort. They celebrated their cats in art, depicting them with exquisite detail and obvious affection in tomb paintings and on amulets. They granted them extraordinary legal protections, with severe penalties, even death, for those who dared to harm them. This wasn't just a casual affection. It was codified into their very laws, demonstrating a societal commitment to feline welfare that feels remarkably progressive, even by today's standards. Historians still debate the exact mechanisms by which the Egyptians managed to integrate cats so thoroughly into their legal and religious frameworks, a testament to the unique nature of this relationship. And then, of course, there was the afterlife. You remember the elaborate mummification rituals, the vast cat cemeteries, like the one at Bastet, which was a major cult center for Bastet and where literally thousands of mummified cats have been discovered. This mainstream historical fact alone speaks volumes. It wasn't enough for the Egyptians to cherish their cats in life. They wanted them by their side for eternity. They believed these beloved companions would accompany them into the netherworld, continuing their protective duties, perhaps even guiding their souls. Imagine that level of devotion, preparing your feline friend for an eternal journey, ensuring they had everything they needed for the cosmic adventure ahead, perhaps even a tiny mummified mouse for a midnight snack. It's a quirky tidbit that really underscores the profound depth of their belief. This bond transcended social status. Whether you were a pharaoh, bedecked in gold and lapis lazuli, or a humble farmer tending your crops by the Nile, the quiet presence of a cat was a source of comfort and security. You can almost picture it. The pharaoh, weary from a day of decrees and diplomatic headaches, finding solace in the rhythmic purr of a cat curled on his throne. Or the farmer, watching the sunset over his fields, a feline shadow at his heels, a silent promise of protection against the night's unseen threats. They say diamonds are a girl's best friend, but in ancient Egypt, it was definitely a fluffy, four-legged sentinel. The Egyptians, you realize, weren't just worshipping cats as idols in a simplistic sense. Their reverence stemmed from a profound understanding of the intrinsic value these creatures brought to their lives, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. It was a relationship built on observation, appreciation, and a deep respect for the natural world. They saw the divine in the cat, rather than just as the cat. It was a recognition of life's interconnectedness, a spiritual ecology where every creature had its place, and some, like the cat, had a particularly sacred one. This extraordinary bond, forged in the crucible of ancient Egypt, serves as a timeless testament to humanity's capacity for deep connection with the animal kingdom. It reminds you that true value isn't always measured in carrots or currency. Sometimes, the most precious things in life are those that offer companionship, protection, and a silent, purring presence that makes a house feel like a home. The ancient Egyptians, in their wisdom, knew that a living, breathing, loving creature was worth far more than any inert metal, no matter how shiny. Their cats were not just possessions. They were family, guardians, and a link to the divine. And that, dear listener, is a bond that truly endures. Now, as the echoes of ancient Egypt begin to softly fade, you can almost feel the gentle weight of a warm, purring presence settling beside you. The world of pharaohs and pyramids, of sun-drenched temples and the glistening Nile, slowly recedes, leaving behind only a quiet sense of peace. You've traveled far tonight, not just through time and across continents, but deep into the heart of a truly unique relationship, one that blossomed millennia ago and continues to resonate even now. Let the images of graceful felines, revered and cherished, drift through your mind like a calming lullaby. The ancient Egyptians found solace and security in their whiskered companions, and perhaps, as you close your eyes, you can too. Allow that ancient, comforting purr to whisper you deeper into your rest, knowing that some bonds, forged in mutual respect and love, truly are unbreakable, timeless, and eternally soothing. Sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with quiet contentment and gentle warmth.